吉岡門弟100に他流派300の総動員。
本日が宮本武蔵の命日となろう。
Crazy Samurai 400 vs. 1, also known as Crazy Samurai Musashi. It's a samurai film that released in 2020 and was released just recently in North America this year. It was directed by Yuji Shimomura, and it stars Tak Sakaguchi. Here Tak plays the legendary warrior Miyamoto Musashi. So the big excitement and main reason everyone is talking about this film has to do with its 77-minute long single-take sword fight. Long single takes have been done before, but never quite an action sequence, and definitely not a pure fighting sequence like this. Just think about how hard that is to do. You have to fight for 77 minutes long straight, no cuts, tiny few breaks, and if you mess up, you have to repeat the entire movie. For the actors, I can imagine that's both a psychological and physical battle, just as you deal with exhaustion and the fear of messing up. The other interesting thing about this film is that it was shot 9 years ago and completed 2 years after that. The film then sat on the shelf until an independent distributor released it on 50 screens in Japan on August 2020. At the time, it was predicted to finish its run with just 3 million yen, which is about $29,000 US. By comparison, the film that led that weekend was a romantic drama called Tread. That earned $2.5 million US. Unfortunately, Crazy Samurai was unable to cut a path even into the top 10. Originally, this movie was supposed to be a totally different film called Ken Kichi. Tak was supposed to make a single-take action fight that lasted 10 minutes. It was later cancelled when the director couldn't work for the film anymore. Tak, however, still wanted to make a movie because he was practicing real-life samurai fighting for a year with his stunt team. All camera and staffs were scheduled and booked already, so Tak then decided to make a movie with one long action sequence. They didn't have much time to make a storyline, and Yuji Shimomura directed only the first part and the last part, basically the only parts with story. So why 77 minutes long? Well, to make a movie, it has to be more than 70 minutes. And so this strange concept of a film was created. To sum it up, I have to say that this movie isn't really a movie. It's a Tak documentary. They didn't really make an action design at all. It was just stunt guys, which were Tak's team. Tak wanted the fights to be simple because he felt that that's what a real fight would look like, unlike the design action movies that most people are used to. This film was apparently so hard to pull off that Tak got injured during the filming. He broke ribs, fingers, teeth, and this is probably why a film like this hasn't been done before. I'll say the real credit in this film should go to the main actor Tak and the one long take cameraman. So the movie begins with a short introduction where a clan is waiting to ambush Miyamoto Musashi. He has apparently disgraced the clan by beating both its master and his son. The rest of the film is just one really long drawn-out single-take fight where Musashi fights waves of enemies, stopping only a few times to take a water break and then breaking for a minute or two before the next wave. To sum it up, it's mostly Musashi slowly walking through like a forest or village where enemies will try surrounding him and try attacking him one at a time before getting countered with 1 or 2 hits. The dead soldiers are then either dragged off the screen by other soldiers, or they stumble off screen before being attacked to later be reused and recasted. Considering this film is just to show off one really long single-take fight, there's almost no character development. The only development is the change from a cocky Musashi in the beginning to one that's really tired and just desperately fighting to survive. There's also no decapitations and all the blood is CGI, so fans of gore won't get much out of this. There's also no real story besides Musashi fighting for survival. So if you came for a narrative of any kind, you won't get that. It ends up feeling a lot like you're watching a video game. where the character must survive wave after wave, fighting bosses in between. The boss fights are basically fighters that will come along and challenge Musashi, and they put up a better fight than the other foot soldiers. I will say though that the fight scenes are real enough, even if the variety of strikes are limited to about 10 moves from Musashi and even less from his opponents. There is some realism in that families would only have a few really skilled swordsmen. The rest would be novices and trainees. I have to say that Tak is an excellent athlete, and he really shows power and speed and just realistic execution. But you do notice that he starts to diminish towards the end as he gets more and more exhausted, and the fighting really starts to show. And there's no real acting here, it's real exhaustion. You have to remember that it's one continuous take, one continuous battle, only a few short breaks to drink some water. Compare that one to modern UFC fighters where they are usually dead after 25 minutes with 4 breaks. You'll also notice the fact that most of the attacks on Musashi are frontal, and that actually was the samurai way. There was no honor in backstabbing, and we only see a few attempted. The special effects are really nothing special. I never liked CGI blood, and that's all we get here. One thing I didn't really like is that there's hardly any bloodstains to his sword or outfit. Well, at least not until the end. The blood is at least somewhat realistic in that it isn't overdone. You'll see spurts that are mostly small, with some really big ones when a major blood vessel is cut. Again, there is no gore or decapitations, and this is really a shame because it would have added this level of brutality. But then again, if it would have been CGI beheadings, then that would have just looked fake. All the swords are real enough, and the fact that Musashi has to change swords every so often was pretty realistic. Katana really weren't the strongest weapons, and they would get blunt and chipped just after a few strikes. If you look hard enough, you'll start to notice that some of the opponents that died already start to come back. But I guess this is a sacrifice as a director that you have to make, especially when you have a limited number of dying warriors. Some of them will have to fight again. It also kills the immersion when you have water bottles and swords that are conveniently placed exactly where Tak is going to walk. The aspect kind of reminds me of video games where you'll find weapons and health items just along the way that you're going. But that doesn't happen in real life, and they should have hid that more. So I really don't know how to recommend this film because it really isn't a film. There's hardly any characters, no story, very few dialogue, and I know that most people are probably going to turn this off after the first 20 minutes. After the introduction, it's just straight non-stop single take fighting, and you just watch enemies get picked off endlessly. It does get tiresome, and probably you'll be bored of it after 10 minutes. I stuck around for the whole thing though, and one thing I noticed is that after a while, I started to become fascinated with the whole thing. Like, you'll be saying to yourself that this is too long, yet you really can't pull your eyes away from it. It's like watching a performance, and it's a much different enjoyment than you usually get out of a film. I'll really only recommend this to you to watch if you're really into fighting. Like, if you're into kendo, I could see getting some enjoyment just watching the various stances and strikes. You can also watch this if you just want to experience something that hasn't been done before, like watching a Guinness World Record. But if you want an actual movie with a story and character development, then I would stay away from this one. Thanks for watching, guys, and check out my Discord if you want to join in on discussions and help pick the next video. Thank you.